We continue to bring you rolling coverage of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, who's died this afternoon at the age of 96. And we're getting reaction from people all over the world. And we go to the UK now, and we're now joined by former journalist Tony Andoh-Korsah. Tony, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the programme. Hello, Tony, are you there? All right.
Hi again.
Hello, Tony.
Hello.
Hi, Tony. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. And I just want to get your thoughts. All right, there's a bit of an echo, so we're going to try and get back to Tony in a couple of seconds. And is it fine now? Tony, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, you're echoing a bit.
Yeah. Tony, I just wanted to get your thoughts as a citizen, just as an ordinary person in the UK, about the news that you've heard today.
Well, I think my first impression was, when I heard the news this afternoon, oh no, you know, how sad. One of the things that I think a lot of people wanted for Queen Elizabeth, may she rest in peace, was the idea that she got to 100. I mean, there would have been the beautiful sort of conundrum of, you know, her having to give herself a special a telegram for that, because that's what happens when you reach 100. So it would have been one of those sweet moments, and basically I think being so close, it just seemed such a shame that she didn't get past that post. It is incredibly sad news. A lot of people in Britain, I think, are feeling it greatly. There's definitely a presence outside Buckingham Palace, for instance, and as we know, she was up in Balmoral. And I think the thing is that despite the fact that the monarchy represents many different things to different peoples in the United Kingdom and across the world, she stands out from the rest of the royal family, if you like, as being someone who was incredibly of service to the world, I think, and to Britain. I mean, one of the things that I was saying to some relatives, and I've spoken to people in Ghana, to you know, to America and Canada and so on, was that it's quite remarkable that somebody at the age of 96 is still doing their job. Not only that, but just 2 days ago was actually doing one of the most important jobs in the country, that of accepting the office of the new Prime Minister by greeting her. That's quite amazing, and it goes well above and beyond most people's sense of job description. So I think that there was this sense that she was, you know, of great service to the nation. And so people will mourn that and mourn the sense of continuity that she represents. And I think everyone's a bit shaken now because actually, you know, we're going through a time of change. We've just got a new Prime Minister. Brexit's just round the corner. There's the war with Ukraine. There's lots of stuff going on. And then we've got a cost of living crisis as well. So, you know, she was one of the certainties that we had. We no longer have that, of course.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was I want to get a sense also about the United Kingdom, Africans in particular, first generation immigrants who've lived in the United Kingdom through her reign. Do they also feel connected to the Queen?
Certainly my mother did. Certainly my generation, you know, those in sort of midlife, I guess, and slightly older, certainly on the whole do. We watched the Jubilee, the Silver Jubilee. We watched the royal weddings. We, you know, lots of times when there was something happening with the royal family that was a sort of national event, we stayed in and watched it on TV or celebrated it somewhere on, a street party or whatever. So I think that there are a lot of people who felt very warm towards certainly Queen Elizabeth because she was somebody who stood out and was a great diplomat as well, in all sorts of situations. I think they had less time for other members of the royal family. But, she, as I say, stood out. There, I'd say with the very young generation, I've talked to quite a few people from that generation today as well. There is a greater level of ambivalence. There's a greater sense of, the historical factors around monarchy, around colonialization, etc., which means that people are less willing to be generous in thought and spirit towards the Queen and the rest of the royal family. And I think that the whole idea of the royal family shrinking in terms of the actual size of those on the payroll and so on would be something which would be applauded not just by that generation but by a lot of other people. But I think in some cases there will be a so what feeling for maybe millennials and so on,
And she was a great ambassador for the country generally, wasn't she?
She was, yes, and I never met her. I met her son, our current King Charles III, which we've got to get used to saying fairly quickly now. I found him very affable when I met him. I was still at school, I have to say, and he was opening a sports centre. But he was charming and good to talk to for the short time I did. And I think that certainly the Queen knocks spots off anybody else in terms of her conversational ability on those sorts of meetings, because I've heard a lot of people talk about how she greets them, what she talks about and stuff like that. She seems to have a very natural sense of being able to talk to more or less anybody. And I think that is a great skill and is something that individuals possess rather than a general rule of people who are in the monarchy or whatever. So I think that's something which people will miss about her greatly,
There were some difficult moments in her reign when Diana died, for example, and more recently, perhaps the Meghan Markle, Harry. But somehow she always seems to get through it. And whilst, yes, people may raise a voice or a tone, somehow she managed to get through it and hold the palace together.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think one of the things about Queen Elizabeth was that she was able to rise above it all. She was not the person who created the problem. She was rather the person who people came to, if you like, sort out the differences as far as one could tell. She was, in that particular case that you mentioned last, she's the grandmother, and that's what grandmothers do. So perhaps we shouldn't be surprised. In the case of, Princess Diana, certainly she was, I think, a lot closer to the situation and felt it a lot more. And it certainly changed a lot about how she did things. She knew that the monarchy had to change in response to what had happened. And she made that famous speech about, I think it was the Annus Horribilis speech, where she sort of announced that things had to change and that they'd made mistakes and they had to get better at dealing with the public and with each other, sort of thing. And I think that she oversaw a lot of change. I mean, she was she was queen for so many years, but you know, the great thing about the queen was that she was able to change with the times, and okay, albeit a little bit behind the times maybe, but her personally, she was able to keep that cult of personality, which allowed her to be above most of the goings-ons within the family. And I think most people see her in a positive light because she's reacted to those particular things. Although, you know, not everything. I mean, there's certain things that will probably remain a problem. Well, did remain a problem for her and in the eyes of a lot of people in Britain on the whole, just because other members of the royal family are so capable of misbehaving, allegedly.
Tony Andoh-Korsah, it's been a pleasure talking to you, my brother. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
All right, that's former journalist Tony Andoh-Korsah, citizen in the United Kingdom. And one of the reasons why we spoke to him was to get a sense from African immigrants, children of immigrants, how they've felt living in Britain and living through the Queen's reign. And he gave us a sense that perhaps it's generational. His age, my age, probably had a greater affinity to the Queen and her institution, and that the younger ones perhaps a bit more ambivalent about the whole monarchy story. So we wait to see. Perhaps King Charles III has a lot of work to do in keeping the monarchy relevant and important to British society, and perhaps in the wider circle, particularly through institutions such as the Commonwealth.